So we were talking about My Little Margie and the radio program.
Yes.
Who was in that?
Well, as I said, Charlie Farrell and I were the only ones from the television cast, and Gil Stratton played Freddie, my boyfriend, and he's just a real dear friend of mine still, he and his wife, and I got such a kick out of it because while we were doing Margie, he would, and when we'd break for dinner, we'd talk, and he would say, boy, what I really want to do, I want to be a sportscaster. And I thought, that's interesting because he's a good actor, really good actor. He said, that's what I really want. And I got such a kick out of it later on when Gil Stratton did become a very well-known and a very fine sports announcer. And, then let me see, I'm really, we went through, several different actors, and we would repeat on them, and they would. I'm forgetting some names which I should not, but
Do you remember?
we had good actors. The radio was different and it was fun, and we had an audience. That was a switch too, because for the television we never had an audience, a live audience, and it was fun. To do Margie episodes and get the audience response, which I'd never enjoyed before, and that was keen. That was real neat.
So at this point, My Little Margie is a big television hit. How did people respond to you?
You mean just they were always nice and there was one when you say how did they respond, there was one very noticeable difference. I think it was difference in response when you do a television show, a series, and you're going into people's homes and you're there on that on that little screen, and you're right there, right in their living room or their den or whatever, and you're there on this little screen, or pretty big now, but as compared to going to a movie theater and sitting in the dark and looking up at this tremendous screen with these tremendous actors and like bigger than life itself, and so I had the feeling, a very definite feeling with people when I would meet them. It would be as if they knew me. I'd almost think that somebody would start, and I'd think, oh, I must know that person, because they would approach you as if you were their friend, and you were, And I liked that. I thought that was so neat, and I still think it's neat because people still do that, and it just amazes me that after all these years that this is still so kind of alive to people, and they respond and remember it so nicely and so fondly, and it's just such a joy.
Do people ever call you Margie?
Yes, yes. They'll usually apologize for it, or they don't notice it. It doesn't bother me. I think that's neat. I said I'll answer to anything,
But in August of '55, the show ended.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, that's not a funny question at all. It should have a very logical reason. But I don't really, it's funny, but I don't recall why, other than the scripts we would get. The scripts started looking, you'd read it and think, this is just like one we did, a good while back. In other words, the format just played out. Some formats are broader and than others, and some have a fairly limited time thing. And I guess I felt that Margie just had used up all the stuff. I never felt like, I don't recall at least that it went into decline. I don't remember it that way at all. I just remember that it was like we quit, we finished. And when we finished, I made the statement to anyone who would listen that I would never do another television series unless it was something I absolutely could not resist.
Why was that?
Because the work, it was so hard. It was so demanding. It was wonderful, and just a joy, but but it was too much, really. You know, it was too much, especially if you had a life and had a family and children and a husband, and I just said I'm not gonna work that hard anymore. That's what I said. That's not what I did.
We'll get to all that. Looking back, how do you think My Little Margie changed or impacted television?
How did it change when it was going on? Well, I think it improved in that, as I said, that when writers become very, very well acquainted with the personalities that they're working with, even though these personalities are actors and but there still is that person in there, and I had the feeling that that they wrote for me better and better and better. It was like I had more and more and so many opportunities to do such fun things. I got to play twins. I got to, which was fun, and I got to be disguised as a Hollywood movie star with a blonde wig and wild makeup and stuff, and I just got to do all kinds of things that they would think of, and so that they were really teaching me as we went along, because they were writing for me and they were like extending what I had to do, and so that I think it always changes for the better when they get to know the people they're writing for. Because at first, it's a mixture that a writer, they know what to expect because they know what's expected of the script and of the performers. But there is a person that goes into each of those performers.
Was Margie Albright considered a typical American woman?
Oh, I don't think so. No, I think she. I don't believe her actions or her thinking was typical. I think she was a little far out. That's an understatement of the year. Her schemes and the way she figured how to fix something or make something work were not like any ordinary American girl would think of.
How did she compare to other characters on television at that time?
Well, I guess as a matter of fact, there wasn't anybody that, now I've never thought about that before, but there wasn't, I don't think there were other parts exactly like that. There were other things where young girls played parts, and but I felt it was different, from other things, the well-known things that were going on.
In what way?
Well, it was just different because of the people, the cast, Margie and her father, and Mrs. Odette, and Freddie, and that was just their way, which was not like somebody else,
So now that My Little Margie ended, what were your career plans now?
Not to do another series,
right.
You see, but it was wonderful. Because actually I had a year in between when Margie finished and when the Gale Storm show, Oh Susanna, started. I had a year, and that was the most wonderful year because we had no idea. Well, I don't know. I mean, I had no idea. Let's say that. Of the doors that would be open, the opportunities, when I say doors, opportunities that would come to me because of Margie. Because I had no idea that was going to be something that the people would accept, and you'd be, somebody that they knew that well and everything. And so I did guest spots. I did all kinds of wonderful, wonderful things that I could, could do, and I did, and singing. I got to pursue my singing, which I loved. My husband always said, singing. She said, singing is your soul's sincere desire. So that was a wonderfully creative outlet for me.
Before we get into all that, let's go back to My Little Margie.
Okay.
Did you have any favorite episodes you wanted to talk about?
No, I can't think of any. It's funny how that's I guess a little bit like saying which is your favorite child. You know, we don't exactly have a favorite child, and that's probably a silly comparison. There are some that are very memorable to me, and there was for example one that pops into my head right away is, and I have to be careful how I say this because it sounds like I had something against animals, but you wouldn't have been aware of it. But Margie series, we used more animals on that series than you can imagine. We had seals, we had ostriches, are awesome to be around. You know, they're in an apartment. They're not the nicest things you'd ever imagine. And we had chimps, we had horses, we had, you know, here you are, but all of these things got involved, and there was one episode where Margie had a chimp that she was taking care of like a baby, you know, and this chimp, I never felt comfortable with him, and I like animals, but this chimp I would carry around on my hip, you know, like you would a child. And actually, I was told later that chimp was really too old. I mean, they only can work up to a certain point because they're stronger than you are, and they learn it, and they no longer. And anyway, this chimp, the trainer was a cruel trainer, which I didn't realize until the way he reacted. But this chimp. When I'd hold him, he would reach around in back of my neck and he'd pull my hair on my neck, and that was like, and I'd say to the trainer, he's pulling my hair again, or he's pinching my arm, or, you know, it's just little diggy things, and I was not comfortable with him. I didn't feel secure at all, and so anyway, as it turned out to get rid of that fast. It turned out that when he worked on the lot with a little boy in Life of Riley, I guess it was, and he bit this little boy, so he was not a safe chimp to work with. And when on our set, when he got away once, and he ran up into the catwalks, and when the trainer got him back, he beat him, and that I could not stand that. And so anyway, we had animals that, you know, the series, it was a lot of work as it was, and putting animals made it even harder. So I said, I said, if you write any more animals, I said, if you write any more animals into the scripts, I said, include me out, please. I said, you can put them in there, but just I don't want to have to be in there working with them. And so they said, okay. And the next thing that comes up is a script with a boxing kangaroo. And so I read the script and I thought, well, I don't really have to be with it very much. I probably wouldn't I'd just be at the scene sort of, and not, and so I come to this scene where Hal Yates, and he's, you know, really revved up, and animals are not easy for anybody, the crew, the director, anybody else to work with. You know, I mean, depending on what they're doing, but they're usually, anyway, there's this scene where he lines it up, the director lines it up, and the kangaroo it's a 3-shot, the kangaroo and Freddie and Margie. And I was so nervous when I would get that kangaroo, and so we'd get it lined up and lit, and they'd roll the camera, and the kangaroo would move, and I would jump out and spoil a shot. Well, I did that. I certainly didn't mean to. I wanted to get it over with, you know. But it just made me so, because he was really, if you'd seen that animal, he was not a docile animal at all, and their tails, you know, are lethal. They're just, and he's wearing the boxing. Anyway, I ruined that take. And I told you Hal Yates was always so sweet to me and so good to me and taught me so much. Well, he got so angry with me at that point, which was understandable. You know, he got so angry when I ruined several takes, and he came up to me, and we're still lined up, you understand, the kangaroo and Freddie and Margie. And the director came up to me and he said, look, and he was red. Not the kangaroo, but the director was just, he had just broken out and was red as a beet. And he said, "This kangaroo is not going to hurt you." He said, "I will admit, yesterday this kangaroo was nervous." He said, "But today he is all right." So anyway, he got about that far, and the kangaroo grabbed him like by the collar and boxed him all the way across the set. And he kind of fell down, but it was the funniest thing you have ever seen. I have never seen a look on anybody's face like was on that director's. Because this kangaroo was really going, he was really going at it. And so Hal Yates came back with this funny smile on his face. He said, "Well, let's line this up a little bit differently." So that's one little thing that always stands out in my book, because that was so funny.
Wow. That's really funny.
I just have your score.
Okay.
Battery.
Okay. So we're stopping? So let's talk about your appearance on Robert Montgomery Presents in 1955.
That was one of the wonderful things I got that I got to do as a result of Margie. And it was a big show that, was a wonderful dramatic show. It was I was very impressed and very, very pleased that I was asked to do it. And I went to New York. We did it there, and we had wonderful, wonderful direction. And it was Tomorrow is Forever. And it had been a Claudette Colbert film. And it was a marvelous part where, as I recall, I aged from, I don't know, whatever early age to a very, very old woman, which of course is an actor's an actor's plum to get a part that's that extensive. And I loved it.
Was it live?
Yes.
How was that?
That's right. I hadn't even thought of it that way, but it was. And man, that's exciting. Because things don't work right, you can't do it over or anything, and I had been accustomed to shooting as a motion picture, where if something went wrong, then you just stopped and you did it over. So going live was really, really thrilling and really exciting, and I just loved it.
Where was it shot?
I don't remember where in New York, but just the fact that was brought to New York to do it sounded pretty impressive to me.
So, do you remember who directed it, or?
I'm working on George Schaefer. Oh yes, because George Schaefer did the Hallmark, a lot of the Hallmark things. He did nothing but the finest things. I'd worked with him one other time, and that was when I did a musical called Wish You Were. Well, sometimes I say Wish You Were Her, but it was Wish You Were Here in Dallas, at the Dallas State Fair, which was a big, I don't know why I digressed to that extent, except for George Schaefer. And that was the most fascinating play, a musical to work in, because it was a good musical, for one. It had a swimming pool on the stage, so you know how lavish it was, and it was a good part that I liked. But the thing that fascinated me about George Schaefer was that the way he planned the time, because you have I don't remember how long we had to rehearse for this very complex musical, and he had worked out the time schedule, and I don't know how to really be specific about it, but it was absolutely marvelous. You spent so much time on one thing and you moved to the next thing, because if you didn't, you'd be bogged down in a problem of one little thing. And so he had that time allotted so that when it was ready, it was ready. Everything was ready. And it was just, to me, he was just the most fantastic director.
So was he like that for Robert Montgomery Presents too?
Well, it wasn't a similar thing, because it was just a completely different thing, being television. But of course, it was so good. It was just such a treat. To whereas many times when I was doing motion pictures, the directors really didn't have that much time to be creative or be, or to work with actors or anything. So you had to kind of, to get to work with a person that was that good and that had time was a real privilege.
How did you get the part for Robert Montgomery Presents?
I don't remember, except it came as a result of My Little Margie. Like everything else, it was like the things were offered to you, which on a lovely plate, you know, like, would you like to do this, which I had not experienced before My Little Margie. And the same thing, that time off in between when I was doing, you know, after I finished with Margie, and I got to guest spot on all of these wonderful, wonderful shows where I'd get to do a musical number and little sketches and stuff. I did Perry Como several times, Patty Page, Pat Boone. And then that was in New York. And then here I did Milton Berle and Bob Hope and Jack Benny. And Jack Benny I absolutely adored. He just was not like any other, most comedians, or no, I shouldn't say most, because I shouldn't generalize like that, but I think many have, it's a tough thing to be a comedian because you're depending on laughs, and it's not easy. And they would have sort of an entourage, and everybody, my experience with other people I worked with, you didn't exactly suggest how you would like to do anything, or, you know, except what you had to do that was yours, like a song. But so I didn't know really if I wanted to do another comedian when my agent said they want you for the Jack Benny show, and I said I don't know, that's kind of a stressful thing, and so anyway he said, well, but you know, so I did it, and it was so unlike working with anybody else. We go in, and of course you always sit down for a reading and for a show of that kind. You know, everybody has a great big table, and you have your scripts, and the writers, the director, the producer, everybody, they're all there, and everybody reads around. Well, in the past, you read your part, and that's what you did. You didn't exactly say, wouldn't it be better if I, or but with Jack Benny, all of a sudden, we're reading around the table, and these people have worked with him, you know, and I hear them say, hey, what about, you know, and suggesting something, and he'd say, yeah, and in other words, he was just like a real person, and you felt free to interact with him. He didn't have yes man or anything. He just was a real wonderful person. And I didn't have like a great big, but you know, you did it on a variety show. You didn't have great big acting parts or anything. But I had a song, and Nelson Riddle was the arranger, conductor, and which is like to me the epitome, you know, of whatever's good. And the song was "You Make Me Feel So Young," which is a beautiful, wonderul song, but it's kind of rangy. At least it was for me, and I was going to myself, I hope I don't crack on that high note, you know, oh boy. And so it knew I was a little nervous about it. So I'm in the wings, and it's about my turn to go out to do my song. And Jack Benny comes up to me, and he puts his arms around me, and he says, you're going to be great. And that was the nicest thing in the whole world. And I just adored him. I just thought that he was just so real and so caring and so loving, and that was a treasure. That was a treasured moment, you know.
Do you remember what year that was?
Like that. No, I wasn't there. You know.
You mentioned Milton Berle. Would that have been the Texaco Star Theater?
Would that have been what? No, it wasn't. It was, that's what he did first, wasn't it? Texaco. So I don't think so. I should be sure, but it was, you know, it was a variety show. I don't remember what the songs I sang or whatever on it.
Did you do any skits on these variety?
Oh yeah, yeah. You were always involved in that, in some sort of the little comedy sketches that they had, stuff. They'd intersperse those around, you know.
Tell me about working with Milton Berle.
He's a very funny man. He's a very able, capable performer. Uh, and since then, like let's say in the last 10 years or so, and I've been with him. I've been with him. I mean, I've been to things at Gale's, things where I was around him and his wife, his present wife, and he's just a dear man now, you know. But he wasn't that easy to work with then. He was. I remember him with a towel around his neck, pacing up and down very dramatically about something. And I don't remember even any specifics, but it just wasn't. It wasn't that happy an experience. That was, you know, one of the kind of stressful things that that made me not particularly want to work with comedians after that.
What happened?
What happened? What with?
You know, what was it about Milton Berle?
I don't know. I wish I shouldn't be, one shouldn't be, say something negative about somebody and then not go ahead and explain why. So it wasn't anything really personal. I'm trying to be more specific. But I think one of the things was I wanted to do a song, and they didn't want me to do that one. They wanted me to do another one, and you know, just some silly stuff like that.
Are there any other shows you want to talk about that you mentioned a bunch? The Perry Como Show, Pat Boone. Do you want to talk about any other shows?
Oh, well, they were. And Dinah Shore. I forgot to say Dinah Shore, and I started recording in that interim also, and so I got to go on, and I had my first record that came out was I Hear You Knockin', which of course is memorable to everyone. To me anyway, and that was when you sold 1 million. That was really something. So I have a gold record for that. So as a result of that too, I got to go on a lot of different shows, and because they would like, you know, like a Perry Como or Patty Page or whatever. I'm sure they like to have somebody who has a #1, you know, hit record out. That's part of the format that they like to have. And I remember going. I'd been on Perry Como's show, I think, twice. And I'd done I Hear You Knockin', and so when I may be exaggerating, may have been the second time, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, when I went on and I had another song out, I don't even remember what it was, but it was a record that I wanted to plug, you know, and they had signed me to do I Hear You Knockin', and so I thought, I ought to be able to talk. This is a good song. You know, it's really a good record, and it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be a hit, and and so I'm talking to them, and they listen to me, but they being like the director, you know, and finally it got through to me. Talk to Perry Como, you know, he's and so I thought, oh, okay. So I went to Perry Como, and I said I would, you know, whatever I said, I would really like to do that other number, and then so and I was giving him a good sell, I thought, you know, and he'd say, yes, and when I finished, he'd say, I want you to do I Hear You Knockin', and I'd say, yes, but, you know, when I'd go on again, he'd say, I want you to do I Hear You Knockin'. I thought I got a kick out of that. He knew what he wanted, you know, that's what I was there for, by golly.
We should stop here and change tapes.
Okay.